Question 1. Who is accountable for managing the product backlog? The Scrum Master. B. The product owner. P. The developers. D. The project manager. Answer B. The product owner. The product owner is explicitly accountable for effective product backlog management, which includes creating and clearly communicating product backlog items, ordering them, and ensuring the backlog is transparent and understood. This accountability is a core part of the product owner's role in maximizing the value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team. While developers or the Scrum Master may assist with the work of refining backlog items, the ultimate accountability for the backlog's content and ordering rests solely with the product owner. A good way to remember this is to think of the product owner as the owner of the product's value and its corresponding backlog. Question 2. A sprint has been cancelled. What should happen to the completed and done product backlog items from this sprint? A. They are discarded as the sprint was not successful. B. They are presented to the stakeholders for sign-off. C. They are reviewed and any that are potentially releasable are delivered. D. They are moved back to the product backlog for the next sprint. Answer: C. They are reviewed and any that are potentially releasable are delivered. If a sprint is cancelled, any completed and done product backlog items are reviewed to see if they are potentially releasable. The core idea is that value should be delivered as soon as it is ready, and cancelling a sprint doesn't negate the value created in the completed work. The decision to cancel a sprint is significant and usually happens when the sprint goal becomes obsolete, meaning the work planned is no longer the most valuable thing to do. Think of it this way: just because a trip was cut short doesn't mean you throw away the souvenirs you already bought. You still keep what's valuable. Question 3. What is the maximum recommended length for a sprint retrospective for a 1-month sprint? 1 hour. B. 3 hours. 4 hours. B. 8 hours. Answer B. 3 hours. The sprint retrospective is time-boxed to a maximum of 3 hours for a 1-month sprint. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. This time box provides enough time for the Scrum team to properly inspect the last sprint regarding individuals, interactions, processes, tools, and their definition of done, and to create a plan for improvements. The purpose of the retrospective is to improve quality and effectiveness, making it a critical event for the team's continuous improvement. A helpful tip is to remember the time boxes for the longer events. For a 1-month sprint, sprint planning is 8 hours, the sprint review is 4 hours, and the retrospective is 3 hours, 8-4-3. Question 4. 3 Scrum teams are working on the same product. What is the best approach to ensure their work is integrated? A. Appoint a chief developer to coordinate the work of all teams. B. Each team must have a done increment that is integrated with the increments of the other teams. C. Merge the 3 teams into one large Scrum team to simplify communication. D. The product owner should manage the dependencies between the teams. Answer: B. Each team must have a done increment that is integrated with the increments of the other teams. When multiple Scrum teams work on a single product, they must mutually define and comply with the same definition of done, to ensure that their combined work results in a single, integrated, and usable increment. The key concept here is transparency and the creation of a valuable, releasable increment every sprint. Each team's work is not truly done unless it works with the work produced by the other teams, preventing a situation where integration becomes a complex and risky separate phase. Always remember, the goal is one integrated increment for the one product, regardless of how many teams are working on it. Question 5. During the daily scrum, the developers realize they will not be able to complete all the items in their sprint backlog. What should they do first? A. Cancel the sprint and start a new one with a more realistic scope. B. Work with the product owner to adjust the work and find the best way to meet the sprint goal. C. Ask the Scrum Master to remove the lowest priority items from the sprint backlog. D. Work overtime to ensure all items in the forecast are completed. Answer: B. Work with the product owner to adjust the work and find the best way to meet the sprint goal. The developers are accountable for the sprint backlog and should collaborate with the product owner when they realize they cannot complete the forecasted work. The primary commitment is to the sprint goal, not to completing every single item in the backlog. By inspecting their progress and adapting their plan, they can work with the product owner to renegotiate the scope of the sprint backlog to ensure the sprint goal can still be met. This embodies the Scrum values of focus and commitment to the goal, rather than blindly following an initial plan. Think of the sprint goal as the destination. If you hit traffic, you might change your route, the work, but you still aim for the same destination. Question 6. The definition of done is a formal description of the state of the increment when it meets the quality measures required for the product. Who creates the definition of done? A. The organization's quality assurance department. B. The product owner. B. The Scrum team. The Scrum Master. Answer: C. The Scrum team. The Scrum team, which includes the product owner, Scrum Master, and developers, collaboratively creates the definition of done. This shared understanding is crucial for transparency, ensuring everyone knows what done means when an item is completed. While organizational standards may serve as a minimum baseline, the team itself must craft a definition of done that is appropriate for their product and context, holding themselves accountable for that quality standard. This collective ownership ensures that the quality criteria are both realistic and supported by the people actually doing the work. Remember, Scrum empowers the entire team to be accountable for delivering a high-quality, valuable increment. Question 7. What does it mean for a Scrum team to be self-managing? A. The team can decide what work to do and what to ignore from the product backlog. B. The team internally decides who does what, when, and how. C. The team does not need a Scrum Master. D. The team members are all managed by the product owner. Answer: B. The team internally decides who does what, when, and how. A self-managing team means that the developers have the authority and autonomy to decide how to best accomplish their work, including how to structure their tasks and who will perform them. This is a fundamental concept in Scrum, designed to leverage the creativity and intelligence of the professionals doing the work. The product owner is still accountable for what work is done by setting the product goal and ordering the product backlog, but the developers determine how to turn those items into a valuable increment. A good way to think about it is that the team manages its own work process, not the product's direction. Question 8. Which of the following is a key responsibility of the Scrum Master in relation to the product owner? Creating product backlog items. B. Helping find techniques for effective product goal definition and product backlog management. C. Prioritizing the product backlog on behalf of the product owner. D. Deciding when to release the product increment. Answer: B. Helping find techniques for effective product goal definition and product backlog management. The Scrum Master serves the product owner by providing support and guidance on best practices for managing the product backlog and defining the product goal. This is a coaching and facilitating role, not a directive one. The Scrum Master does not do the work for the product owner, like creating or ordering items, but rather helps them become more effective in their role. For example, they might introduce techniques like user story mapping or impact mapping to improve the backlog's clarity and value focus. The takeaway is that the Scrum Master is a servant leader who enables others to be successful in their roles within the Scrum framework. Question 9. What is the primary purpose of the sprint goal? It is a contractual commitment by the developers to deliver a certain amount of functionality. B. It provides a summary of the product backlog items selected for the sprint. C. It gives the developers flexibility regarding the exact functionality implemented. D. It is an objective that will be met during the sprint and must not change. Answer: C. It gives the developers flexibility regarding the exact functionality implemented. The sprint goal provides coherence and focus, encouraging the Scrum team to work together rather than on separate initiatives. While it is a commitment, its main purpose is to create flexibility. If the work turns out to be different than expected, the developers can collaborate and adapt their plan to still achieve the overarching sprint goal. This prevents the team from becoming a feature factory that just checks off items, and instead allows them to use their expertise to solve a problem and deliver value. Remember, the sprint goal answers why the sprint is valuable, giving the team a clear target to aim for, even if the path to get there needs to change. Question 10. Which statement best describes the sprint review? A. A formal meeting where the developers get their work approved by the product owner. B. A demonstration of the increment to stakeholders to get a sign-off for release. C. A working session where the Scrum team and stakeholders inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog. D. A meeting for the Scrum team to assess their performance and plan improvements. Answer. C. A working session where the Scrum team and stakeholders inspect the increment and adapt the product backlog. The sprint review is an informal, collaborative working session, not a formal sign-off or status report. Its purpose is to facilitate inspection and adaptation, which are pillars of the empirical process control that underpins Scrum. During this event, the Scrum team presents the results of their work to key stakeholders, and everyone collaborates on what to do next, which provides valuable input for the product backlog. Thinking of it as a workshop rather than a presentation is a helpful mental model to capture its interactive and forward-looking nature. Question 11. Who is required to attend the Daily Scrum? The developers. B. The developers and the Scrum Master. C. The developers and the product owner. D. The entire Scrum team. Answer. A. The developers. The Daily Scrum is an event created for the developers of the Scrum team. According to the Scrum Guide, if the product owner or Scrum Master are actively working on items in the sprint backlog, they participate as developers. However, their attendance is not otherwise required. The event's purpose is for the developers to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog for the upcoming day's work, making their participation essential for it to be effective. A key tip is to remember that the Daily Scrum is owned by the developers to help them self-manage their work. Question 12. What are the 3 pillars of empiricism that Scrum is founded upon? Planning, execution, and control. B. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. C. Commitment, courage, and focus. D. Product, process, and people. Answer. B. Transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Scrum is founded on empirical process control theory or empiricism, which asserts that knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is known. The 3 pillars of this theory are transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Transparency means the process and work are visible to those performing the work and those receiving it. Inspection involves frequently examining Scrum artifacts and progress toward a goal to detect undesirable variances. Adaptation means adjusting a process or material as soon as possible to minimize any further deviation. All Scrum events and artifacts are designed to support these 3 pillars. Question 13. A product owner wants to add a new high-priority item to an active sprint. What should the Scrum Master do? A. Add the item to the sprint backlog immediately, as the product owner is accountable for value. B. Tell the product owner this is not allowed and the item must wait for the next sprint. C. Advise the product owner to negotiate with the developers to see if it can be accommodated. D. Call a meeting to cancel the sprint and start a new one with the new item included. Answer. C. Advise the product owner to negotiate with the developers to see if it can be accommodated. Only the developers can add work to their sprint backlog during a sprint, as they are the ones committed to the sprint goal and managing their own work. The correct approach is for the product owner to discuss the new item with the developers. The developers can then assess the impact on their progress toward the sprint goal and determine if they can pull the new item into the sprint, possibly by swapping out another item of equivalent effort. The Scrum Master's role here is to facilitate this conversation and ensure the rules of Scrum are followed, empowering the team to make the decision. Remember, the sprint backlog is owned and managed by the developers during the sprint. Question 14. What is the role of the Scrum Master during the Daily Scrum? A. To lead the meeting and get status updates from each developer. B. To facilitate the meeting for the developers if they request it, and ensure it stays within the time box. C. To update the sprint burn-down chart for the developers. D. To take notes and send out meeting minutes to stakeholders. Answer. B. To facilitate the meeting for the developers if they request it, and ensure it stays within the time box. The Daily Scrum is an event for the developers by the developers and they are responsible for conducting it. The Scrum Master's role is to ensure the event takes place and stays within its 15-minute time box, but they do not lead it or collect status. They act as a servant leader, teaching the developers to keep the meeting focused on progress toward the sprint goal and to use it for effective planning. If the developers are struggling, the Scrum Master can facilitate, but the goal is to coach the team to a point where they can run it effectively themselves. A good Scrum Master empowers the team rather than managing it. Question 15. The 5 Scrum values are commitment, focus, openness, respect, and which other value? Courage. B. Trust. Transparency. D. Simplicity. Answer: A. Courage. The 5 Scrum values are commitment, focus, openness, respect, and courage. These values are the bedrock upon which the Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation come to life, fostering an environment of trust. The value of courage refers to the Scrum team members having the courage to do the right thing and work on tough problems. For example, it takes courage to be open about impediments, to challenge the status quo, or to cancel a sprint when its goal becomes obsolete. A great way to remember this is that without courage, the other values can't be fully enacted. Question 16. What is the output of sprint planning? The sprint goal. B. The product increment. C. The sprint backlog. An updated product backlog. Answer: C. The sprint backlog. The primary output of the sprint planning event is the sprint backlog. The sprint backlog is composed of the sprint goal, the why, the set of product backlog items selected for the sprint, the what, and an actionable plan for delivering the increment, the how. This artifact is a plan by and for the developers. It provides a real-time picture of the work that the developers plan to accomplish during the sprint to achieve the sprint goal. A good tip is to think of sprint planning as the event where the team creates its detailed plan for the upcoming sprint, and the sprint backlog is the tangible result of that planning. Question 17. If an item in the sprint backlog cannot be finished by the end of the sprint, what typically happens to it? A. It is removed from the product backlog entirely. B. The sprint is extended until the item is completed. C. It is moved back to the product backlog for the product owner to reorder. D. It is automatically included in the next sprint. Answer: C. It is moved back to the product backlog for the product owner to reorder. In Scrum, sprints are fixed-length events and are not extended. If any planned work is not completed by the end of the sprint, it is returned to the product backlog. The product owner is then accountable for reordering it based on its current value and priority relative to all other items in the backlog. It is not automatically carried over to the next sprint, as circumstances and priorities may have changed. This process ensures that the product backlog remains the single source of truth for all future work and that every sprint planning starts with a fresh look at what is most valuable to do next. Question 18. Who is responsible for ensuring the Scrum team adheres to Scrum theory, practices, and rules? The product owner. B. The developers. The Scrum Master. D. The Project Management Office, PMO. Answer: C. The Scrum Master. The Scrum Master is accountable for establishing Scrum as defined in the Scrum Guide, and this includes coaching the team and the larger organization on its theory and practice. They help everyone understand and enact the framework, acting as a true leader who serves the team and organization by promoting and supporting Scrum. This involves removing impediments, facilitating events as needed, and protecting the team from outside interruptions. For example, if a stakeholder tries to give work directly to a developer, the Scrum Master would intervene and coach the stakeholder on the proper process. Think of the Scrum Master as the guardian of the Scrum framework. Question 19. A key stakeholder is repeatedly disrupting the daily Scrum by asking for status updates. What is the most appropriate first action for the Scrum Master? A. Ask the stakeholder to stop attending the daily Scrum. B. Have a conversation with the stakeholder to explain the purpose of the daily Scrum and its intended participants. C. Ignore the stakeholder as they are important to the project. D. Report the stakeholder's behavior to their manager. Answer: B. Have a conversation with the stakeholder to explain the purpose of the daily Scrum and its intended participants. The Scrum Master's role includes helping those outside the Scrum team understand which of their interactions with the team are helpful and which are not. A direct, educational conversation is the most effective first step. The Scrum Master should explain that the Daily Scrum is a 15-minute planning event for the developers, not a status meeting for stakeholders. They can then guide the stakeholder to more appropriate forums for information, such as the sprint review. This approach resolves the issue while also educating the organization and fostering better collaboration, which is a core part of the Scrum Master's service to the organization. Question 20. What is an increment in Scrum? A. The sum of all product backlog items completed during a sprint. B. A concrete stepping stone toward the product goal. C. The plan for the next sprint. D. The total amount of work remaining on the project. Answer: B. A concrete stepping stone toward the product goal. Each increment is a concrete step towards the product goal, representing a piece of usable, valuable product. An increment is the sum of all the product backlog items completed during a sprint and the value of the increments of all previous sprints. For an increment to be considered done and usable, it must meet the definition of done. The key concept is that each sprint produces a new, potentially releasable version of the product, allowing the team to deliver value and get feedback frequently. Think of the product goal as the final destination and each increment as a completed leg of the journey. Question 21. For a new Scrum team, who has the final say on the length of a sprint? The Scrum Master. B. The product owner. C. The developers. The Scrum team. Answer: D. The Scrum team. While the product owner might have a preference based on the need for feedback and the Scrum Master can advise on best practices, the decision on sprint length is made by the entire Scrum team. The team must collectively decide on a duration of 1 month or less that is appropriate for their context, allowing them to deliver a usable increment and get feedback at a sustainable pace. For example, a team working on a rapidly changing product might choose a 1-week sprint, while another team with longer integration cycles might opt for a month. The key is that it is a team-level decision that balances delivering value with the overhead of the Scrum events. Question 22. What does the sprint backlog represent? A. A commitment by the developers to complete all the items selected. B. The plan by the developers for the sprint, which they adapt throughout the event. C. A list of all work that must be done for the entire project. D. The set of features that the product owner wants in the next release. Answer: B. The plan by the developers for the sprint, which they adapt throughout the event. The sprint backlog is a plan by and for the developers, consisting of the sprint goal, the selected product backlog items, and a plan for creating the increment. It is not a rigid commitment but an emergent forecast of the work needed to achieve the sprint goal. It is highly visible and updated throughout the sprint as more is learned, making it a living artifact that reflects the team's current plan. A good analogy is a chef's prep list for a dinner service. It's a detailed plan, but the chef will adapt it on the fly based on how the evening unfolds. Question 23. The product owner is not available during a sprint. What is the most significant risk? The daily scrum cannot be held effectively. B. The team's velocity will decrease. C. The sprint goal may become obsolete without anyone to clarify business needs. D. The developers will not know what to work on. Answer: C. The sprint goal may become obsolete without anyone to clarify business needs. The product owner is accountable for maximizing the value of the product, which involves constant communication and clarification with the developers. If they are unavailable, the biggest risk is that the team might continue working towards a sprint goal that is no longer the most valuable thing for the business. The developers might build the wrong thing or make incorrect assumptions because they cannot get timely answers to their questions about the work. While the developers can continue working from the sprint backlog, the absence of the product owner creates a significant risk to delivering value, which is the ultimate measure of success in Scrum. Question 24. What is the main reason for the Scrum Master to ensure the sprint retrospective takes place and is positive and productive? It is where the team receives performance reviews from the product owner. B. It is the key opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements. C. It is the formal event for approving the increment before release. D. It is the meeting where the team plans the work for the next sprint. Answer: B. It is the key opportunity for the Scrum team to inspect itself and create a plan for improvements. The sprint retrospective's purpose is to plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness, making it the primary event dedicated to continuous improvement for the Scrum team. It is a crucial part of the inspect and adapt cycle, focused specifically on the team's process, interactions, tools, and definition of done. By holding a positive and productive retrospective, the Scrum Master helps create a safe environment where the team can openly discuss what went well, what problems it ran into, and how those problems were solved. Think of the retrospective as the team's dedicated time for a pit stop, where they tune up their engine for the next leg of the race. Question 25. Who has the authority to cancel a sprint? The Scrum Master. B. The developers. T. The product owner. The stakeholders. Answer: C. The product owner. The product owner has the authority to cancel a sprint, although this is a rare and disruptive event. This decision is typically made when the sprint goal becomes obsolete, meaning the goal no longer provides value due to a change in business direction, market conditions, or technology. While others, like stakeholders or developers, might influence this decision, the final accountability rests with the product owner as the person responsible for maximizing product value. A helpful way to remember this is that since the product owner is accountable for value, they are also the one who can officially declare that a sprint's goal is no longer valuable enough to pursue.